of social media, you've likely seen the hashtags for Black Lives Matter or the rallying cries to March for Our Lives. Good morning. My name is Shamika C, and I have been researching the question: to what extent has collaboration through social media platforms facilitated social and political activist movements in the United States in the past 70 years? And through my research, I was able to come to the conclusion that the increased use of social media within activism has led to an increase in social and political activist movements in the United States. But before we look at the impact of social media on activism, we must first look at the evolution of large-scale communication in the United States. An important example of activism before the implementation of social media was Martin Luther King and his civil rights movement. As you can see here, King is at the location of his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, in which he addressed a crowd of thousands. This exemplifies how in the past, demonstrations like these were predominantly given by the spoken word and were spread in similar ways. They were spread through spoken word as well as written words such as letters and used radio as well. In the case of letters, another example of King's involvement in the civil rights movement is his letter from Birmingham jail, in which he responded to clergymen that were criticizing his methods in the civil rights movement. He justified his actions in that they would foster such a tension that the community would just constantly refuse to negotiate would be forced to confront the issue. This is a testament to the efficacy of his methods. His forms of nonviolent protest forced many to act and allowed his movement to become extremely widespread. However, the progression of our society has thrust us into a new era of communication. Edward Kessler, in his research article, Social Media and Movement Ideas, noted that in the past 5 years, social media use has grown exponentially. This entails a transition from mostly spoken and written word communication to the implementation of more technology-oriented communication. This includes Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and other platforms. And this has a few implications for the field of activism: a change in public awareness, an increase in the sense of urgency about an issue, and an increase in individual agency to act on this issue. The interconnectedness fostered by social media has led to an increase in public awareness as more people learn of an issue through social media. This increase in public awareness has heightened the sense of urgency about a certain issue. Take the 2010 Haiti earthquake, for example. As more and more people heard about it through social media platforms, many were compelled to donate through different online resources. According to Psychology Today, these several had a new appreciation of the enormity of a disaster in a part of the world that might have never invaded their consciousness. This sense of urgency led to heightened individual agency. As more people learned of an issue, a greater portion of them subsequently were compelled to act. But to delve more specifically into the impact of social media on activism, the world of hashtags must be explored. Hashtags are used in relation to a subject to categorize the content and make it more accessible for social media users and followers of social media accounts. As you can see here, social media is already being shown as a platform. As Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube are shown as platforms to spread the movement. In addition, the hashtag March for Our Lives was used predominantly on Twitter to spread the movement and allow it to be as widespread as it is today. Another example of the use of hashtags in activism is Black Lives Matter. The hashtag for Black Lives Matter gained momentum after Michael Brown was shot by a police officer in August of 2014. As you can see here in this graph by New York Magazine, the tweets using the hashtag increased after each major incident, whether it was a protest or another incident that may have sparked outrage. As a result, Black Lives Matter grew to be an internationally known movement. And this international and widespread knowledge of the movement is important for a few reasons. It allowed Black Lives Matter groups to more effectively mobilize resources, build coalitions, and control the narrative of their movement. Because social media is a platform that does not necessarily require any in-person meetings or sign-ups, Black Lives Matter groups identified social media as an important platform for gaining resources, as they were able to easily put out calls for donations and fulfill those requests. Coalitions were also able to be built more easily, whether it was between different Black Lives Matter groups or a Black Lives Matter group and another activist group. This building coalitions more easily through social media allowed for another source of participants and resources. And lastly, the narrative was able to be controlled more effectively. Social media provided the ability to increase, social media allowed certain content to be amplified through reposting and sharing options. In addition, a research study titled scaling social movements through social media. In the case of Black Lives Matter, groups interviewed noted that social media provided them a platform to tell their story as real, as raw, and as relevant as can be. The implications are clear. Social media is a vital tool within activism, as it has allowed activism to grow and spread, build resources and coalitions, while controlling their message more effectively. Returning to my question, to what extent has collaboration through social media platforms facilitated social and political activist movements in the United States in the past 70 years? I came to the conclusion that the increased use of social media has led to an increase in social and political activism in the United States. Despite this, there are a few limitations that have been identified. Social media has been shown as responsible for something called slacktivism, or a lazy form of activism that does not necessarily require any direct participation. Not everyone that a movement reaches will be compelled to act, and sometimes simply clicking a link or following a related account have been overestimated as direct participation. However, these are not necessarily major shortcomings. Social media is still an extremely important tool within activism, as it allows a movement to spread and budding movements to bloom, and existing ones to continue to grow with participants and resources. Social media is important in enabling and threatening activism in today's world. Thank you. What questions do you have?
Okay, I have two questions for you, Shamika. First up, how valid and reliable are the sources that you use, and then how do you know?
I found that some sources, such as scaling social movements through social media, in the case of Black Lives Matter, and social media and movement ideas, were both valid research studies. And in case I had any doubts about the validity and credibility of a source, I was able to conduct some extra research to determine that the information they were giving me was correct and accurate.
And what might be, well, no, that's not a good question for you. What advice would you have for other researchers who consider this topic?
As I stated in my limitations about slacktivism, other researchers should be advised to research how that is being addressed, because though it is not a major shortcoming in social media's impact on activism, it is still present, and how to address that should be looked at by other researchers.
You're done. You can